all unite to yearn and strive for our republic that reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might.
Good evening and welcome to Your Right to Know by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. My name is Mary Lotze and I will be your host for this evening's show. And joining me tonight for the very first time, we are very proud and honored to have Chanel Prunier join us on the table, on the dais.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming and your willingness to join us tonight. Chanel is the National Committeewoman for the MASSGOP. And tonight we're going to talk about getting youth involved in the GOP and the conservative movement. Chanel has done great work in this area and we really want to explore it. Chanel, thank you so much for coming and being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
As we open up tonight, just a little bit about yourself. I'd like a little bit about your background and when you decided to become a Republican, when you became a Republican, a conservative, did you evolve into this like many of us people who started out as Democrats? Or is this something that you found yourself as a conservative early on in your life?
Well, I grew up here in Central Mass, and I did grow up in a conservative household. My father was one of those people that was always paying very close attention, watching news programs, read the Telegram, other newspapers all the time, and he would frequently express how upset he was at the course of the country and the Democratic leadership that we had. But my father was never really involved. He was never on a town committee. When I was growing up, he didn't spend a lot of time volunteering for campaigns. He was very knowledgeable, but not very involved. And so when I got to be a little bit older, I happened to be walking across campus one day, and there was a table set up, and it said, "Join the College Republicans." And so I wandered over, and I said, "Well, I'm a Republican," and I signed up. Within a year or two, I was the head of the chapter, and then ran to be the secretary.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, and then later the co-chair of our statewide College Republican Alliance. So I got involved pretty young and pretty heavily at an early age. So.
That's actually pretty amazing because what we're finding, and I've been doing a lot of research leading into this, that you did start out as a college student into the Republican Party. I'm even surprised to hear that there was a table or a booth on your college campus. You went to Assumption College in Worcester, if I'm not mistaken. But I've been doing a lot of research on this, and one of the things that I found is we're talking really a group of 18 to 29-year-olds when we're talking about this millennial group or whatever. And one of the things that they're saying is that so many of these people, well, I guess the young fall into almost two brackets. One is that just because of their age, they either are liberal, or if they are liberal, they fall into the Democratic Party, or maybe unenrolled, but nevertheless they lean liberal Democrat in their voting patterns. Or the other half is they're just not interested in politics at all. And they don't identify with anything because they have no intentions of voting or no intentions of even getting involved in the political parties at all. So from a young perspective and working with these groups, pre and post college, what are some of the strategies to get people involved in politics, those that are disinterested, make them understand that this is more than just something that grown-ups do?
Well, I think we as a party need to do a better job of asking to start. I think that we've had some good success running younger candidates of late in Massachusetts as Republicans. An example I would give is Representative Leah Cole, who is 25 years old. She ran for state representative at 24. She ran as a nurse, not as a politician. She'd never run for office before. A lot of younger people gravitated toward her campaign because they saw somebody who They said, well, this person is my age, she has a similar background as mine, and look, if she can do it, then maybe I can do it as well.
So it's a little bit of that identity thing.
I think that there's part of that, and I think it's also we need to ask. I mean, we need to make sure that our candidates, when we run younger candidates, that they ask their friends, that they ask their neighbors, folks who are that age, that they don't discount them, and that they say, well, you know, we're the same age, I'm running for office, you should be involved in my campaign. The surveys show that the largest reason people don't get involved in politics and don't get involved in campaigns is nobody has ever asked them to do so, which is pretty amazing when you think of all of the money and all of the effort that's spent knocking on doors and doing outreach. That's one of the big reasons that people give in surveys. Well, no one's ever asked. And so we as a party need to do a better job of asking to start with. But we have a lot of good young candidates that we've seen emerge over the past couple of years. Here in Central Mass, is Stephanie Fatman, who's our Register of Probate.
She's been on our show, Stephanie.
There you go, is a very bright young woman who's under age 30 and has taken the plunge to run for office and been successful. And I think we need to make sure younger people in our party understand that they can run at a young age.
And not only is Stephanie being successful, from what I'm to understand, she's making an immediate difference in the position.
Right.
And that's that energy that comes with youth.
Yep, the energy, the understanding of the technology that's available to upgrade systems, you know, what it takes to get rid of inefficiencies in systems within the Register of Probate's office. And so I think adding a dose of youth at all levels of government is a good thing.
When you say that, one of the things, again, in doing my research for this topic, is that when youth go to the polls in 2016, we're looking at a big election in 2016. One of the things, this was a factoid I heard on TV, is that the number one thing that the youth voter, and again, we're looking at 18 to 29, is looking for in their candidate for president is going to be trust.
Yeah.
Now, the very interesting thing is, as I also went through and I looked at Mrs. Clinton, Hillary Clinton, the presumptive Democratic candidate, her trust numbers are actually plummeting.
Very low, yes.
They're dropping, and they're dropping precipitously, quickly. I found in the Wall Street Journal, May 4th, only 25% view Hillary Clinton as trustworthy, down from 36% just a year ago. So, you know, this is something, so let me ask you this, do you think trust is a big element in youth vote?
I think it's a very big element. I think that Hillary Clinton has done a number of things that have made all demographics, including young people, question her judgment, everything from Benghazi to this recent episode with her emails. And younger people understand, I think, pretty well that, well, like 2 devices and different accounts. That's a little bit of a language that young people are speaking. All these things, it doesn't add up to them, and her story doesn't make sense. And beyond that, I think there's the additional question of, does this person care about people like me? And I think that in polls that also shows that younger voters and older voters think that Hillary Clinton isn't somebody that is going to care about them and their issues and their problems and the daily challenges that they face in their lives.
In addition to trust, what are some of the other values or issues that you think will really weigh on the youth vote when they go into the polls in 2016?
Well, I think the thing that bodes well for us as a party is that they're looking for fresh new faces. Okay. They are not looking for Hillary Clinton, who is, been in the White House before, has had all kinds of baggage from various things over the years, her husband. But I think we as a party have to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of also nominating somebody who is old news. Hillary Clinton is really not a fresh face, she's old news. We need to make sure that we get a strong contrast, and we have somebody who is, a rising star in our party. I think we can't afford to nominate somebody that doesn't play up that contrast. One of the candidates that I would say appeals to that sort of narrative, Marco Rubio, who has really a fascinating story, and as well as Rand Paul, who definitely appeals to younger folks. I would personally caution that while I think Any of our nominees would be, our potential nominees, any of the candidates are certainly going to be better at running our country than Hillary Clinton. I think if we have a Clinton versus Bush race again, we are taking some of that ammunition off the table for our party, because younger voters say, wow, these are the names that were running before I was born.
Right,
that kind of
right.
thing.
Back to the future.
Right, right.
Let me ask you this, because I think actually what you just said, the fresh new face, I think that was some of the issues that came in 2008 and again in 2012.
Yeah, the president has definitely used this to his advantage, and he used it to his advantage to defeat Hillary Clinton in their own party primary.
Yes.
And so we need to make sure we nominate somebody that's able to do the same kind of thing.
And in fact, in 2008 and in 2012, let me just, for the viewers, the youth did swing the Barack Obama vote. Now let me just, in 2008, we of course had John McCain versus Barack Obama. John McCain in this 18 to 29 group got 32% to President Obama's 66%. Now 4 years ago, or almost 4 years ago now in 2012, it really looked like President Obama was not going to be able to pull it off. Why would the youth vote for a man who still hadn't kept any of his promises? Why would they vote for somebody who really didn't materialize on this hope and change meme that was so popular? However, in 2012, Romney got 36% and President Obama got 60% of the youth vote. And that was especially true in the key states of Florida, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Ohio. So it just shows that even in 2012, based on the fact that so many youth felt disenfranchised, they still went back and stuck with.
Yeah, and I think that's partly our fault as the Republican Party. I think we need to do more to engage younger people in a manner that is familiar to them. We need to be more engaged in social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our candidates didn't do that in the past nearly as well as President Obama. And I think the 2014 election results show that we are starting to close the gap. As the RNC National Committeewoman for Massachusetts, I've seen some of the things that the National Party is doing in some key states to start to engage in terms of social media and new data and digital projects that I think that they rolled some things out in 2014 and now they're doing an analysis, and they'll hopefully be able to modify and improve things going into the 2016 presidential elections for when we do have a nominee.
In addition to the social media, and I do agree that that was a big thing, and President Obama was all of that. I mean, he was youthful, he was vigorous. He had that cool factor going for him that just really wowed the young people. They identified with him. The celebrity factor, that always seems to be,
and part of that is generated by our media, and we need to do a better job of engaging in different alternative medias and having our candidates engage in different places that they haven't in the past. An example of that is Rand Paul has done some speeches at historically black universities in recent months, and I think that kind of outreach is important, and that sort of thing gets talked about on not just those college campuses, but through social media and other news coverage throughout kind of a younger ecosystem than if you simply went and gave a speech at a town hall in New Hampshire. And so we need to do a lot more of that as a party.
Do you think there's any downside to a president or a presidential candidate losing credibility by appearing on shows like Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, The Tonight Show?
Well, I think that
the
there's a whole
lady with the bubble bath, whatever that, with the green lipstick.
There's a whole audience of younger voters that is where they get their entertainment, that don't watch the standard talk shows, that don't read traditional news sources, that they largely get news and commentary from folks like that and from places like Facebook. And so we as a party need to recognize that and adapt to it. It may be that we need to spend some time preparing our candidates and spend some time with those hosts, saying these are some of the things that we would like to make sure we talk about and have that conversation. The RNC has recently moved to change the primary debate process in a new way so that more alternative media and minority media will be included noted, there will be fewer debates. However, there will be a better diversity of it's not just the big networks or the big newspapers and 4 debates in New Hampshire or whatever. It'll be a better cross-section of people that we're looking to talk to. And I think doing that and then doing it on when the general election arrives, so that there is a Telemundo debate, so that there are different venues for some of these things.
Time
and we've
to be on
seen
the
in
nighttime
past.
talk
right,
shows.
Things like that. Right.
I really think that people of my age bracket look at some of these more humorous things, detract from the status of the president.
Yeah.
Exactly, the seriousness of the job. But the youth look at that as he or she is relating to me.
Yeah, it's that poll question, which one of these candidates would you most likely want to have a beer with?
Right.
I mean, it does reflect who people walk into the ballot box and vote for on election day. And we as people in political campaigns need to understand that a huge factor is, do they like you?
Yes.
I've worked with dozens of candidates over the years, and the biggest problem is when people say, well, I know I agree with this person on all the issues, but I like the opponent and I don't like her. And that's a problem for a candidate.
Yes.
And so we need to make sure that our candidates are generally likable. And I think that you're seeing a lot of younger, more likable, active people in the Republican Party running, in particular for local office, fresh faces, coming out of cities and town committees like the Fitchburg Town Committee, starting off as school committee selectmen. One of the first campaigns that I worked on professionally was when State Representative Scott Brown first ran in a special election for state senate. And my parents said, oh, this Scott Brown guy, no one's going to remember him. This job will be over in March, win or lose, and what are you going to do with yourself then? I can't believe you're leaving your job to go work for him. And it wound up being a very good decision, and people started to realize very early on that Scott was a very likable guy, and as a result, he had cross-party appeal in a place like Massachusetts. And so you can't underestimate, run people that are likable.
And interesting about Scott Brown, because I used to listen to Michelle McPhee on the radio, Boston radio, and Scott Brown, I swear, called Michelle's show maybe once or twice a week, just to weigh in on something. His voice was out, his name was out, they would have a nice conversation. You knew who he was, and you liked him.
Yeah, and he made the time. He engaged with people. He would walk into a room and shake every hand and talk to every person, and make sure that they knew that he cared about what they thought about whatever issues were coming up. And I think that's incredibly important too. Now, you don't get the sense that Hillary Clinton cares about people.
Well, I certainly don't. Now. A group that I have recently just found out about, and I'm going to give the website address to our viewers, because I really encourage everyone, especially people that have youth out there watching the show, or parents and grandparents of youth, to the Young America's Foundation, YAF.org. This is a wonderful organization that supports the youth and Republican movement in the United States. And I know you know something about that group.
Yeah, as a student, they did a number of conferences that we as college Republicans went to every year. They're co-sponsors of CPAC in Washington, D.C. They actually do a week-long student conference at a university. I think it's George Washington, at one of the universities each summer for students on summer break. They do even a high school conference, so for high school students, and then a separate one for college students. And then on the West Coast, they have the Reagan Ranch. They've preserved Ronald Reagan's ranch, and they bring students out there for a conference every year as well. So they run a number of programs. They help college Republican clubs bring speakers, and they do a great job engaging younger people that want to be involved, particularly with different issues and different political campaigns.
Now, just recently, it was in March, late March, I believe, I went to the Young American Foundation's weekend seminar, weekend event up in Nashua, New Hampshire. And it was absolutely amazing. They brought in youth, college people, high school people from as far away as the West Coast. And they paid for a lot of these students, the requirements for them travel and overnight stays in the hotel and all. But let me tell you about it. I had breakfast with a group of students from the University of Southern California, and it was so interesting to be involved with insightful, young, intelligent people who were interested in their future. They weren't just interested in the chess game of politics, which we can kind of look, you know, if this person wins, who's going to get this seat. They were interested in America's future. And that I thought was so interesting. Now, in breakfast, I asked them, I said, why is it, or how would you say, what would you look for in a Republican or a conservative candidate? And why is it that our Republican and conservative candidates can't seem to make inroads? And the group from Southern California said their feeling was that many times the Republicans or the conservatives have poor youth people skills. And I think this goes back to some of what you were talking about. They do not know the proper language.
Well, and if you think of somebody like John McCain, he's just not going to have that same ability to connect with younger people as Barack Obama is going to. And so it's at the top, but it's also, you know, down to other levels of government, and I think we need to do a better job literally from city council all the way up to the presidency.
One of the comments that they used is they said, we need to find candidates in the Republican Party who have sizzle, charisma, I thought interesting words, but they said who can articulate in cogent and with clarity a message. And at this point, it seems like as much as we Republicans in Massachusetts thought Mitt Romney was brilliant, intelligent, a good businessman, could really turn it around and bring home, the youth were like kind of lost with him. He wasn't able, he didn't have the sizzle, he didn't have the charisma, he wasn't able to articulate a cogent message that reached out and talked to them.
And I think part of it was his, you know, polling models. He probably spent a lot of time on groups that were not younger people, and you have to outreach to everybody, and you have to be, you know, we as a party have to be talking to every group of people, younger people, older people, people in urban places, cities, conducting that outreach. And I think sometimes, you know, somebody like Mitt Romney isn't always, you know, the best ambassador for something like that, and the contrast showed with Barack Obama. I think we have a really strong bench of individuals running in our primary now, and I think hopefully we'll field somebody. I think many of them would be certainly have more sizzle than Hillary Clinton.
Well, and interesting because I think the Republican Party looking to be sort of the big tent. I think we're looking more like a big tent party right now than the Democratic Party, who has always kind of carried that
they're coalescing around one person, whereas we're having a more democratic process, having our candidates present their ideas, and there are a lot of them. The debates that will happen this fall, August, and in the fall will have you know, upwards of 10 candidates on stage, as opposed to the very anemic field that you're seeing on the Democratic side. And I think that's because there's a lot of interest. Our party has a very strong bench.
Very diverse bench.
We've picked up a lot of you know, congressional seats in recent years. We took back the Senate. We're also seeing it at the legislative level, and the number of Republicans serving in state legislatures has increased substantially since 2010, and that bodes well for congressional races and U.S. Senate races, and it's created a wide field for the presidency as well, because we've had people that do that model of running low and then working their way up, and I think that it will also bode well for us for things like redistricting. And so it's important, you know, I would say to everybody who's a Republican watching your show in Fitchburg, get involved in a local campaign, you know, get involved in races for school committee or city council or mayor, because, you know, those are the opportunities to get somebody good into office and then to later on run them for state representative or state senator or a statewide candidate.
Who are some of the shining stars that you see
well,
on the way up?
Yeah, I think I mentioned before Register of Probate Stephanie Fatman, who you've had on your show, and Representative Leah Cole, but also some other folks here in Central Mass. Kate Campanelli from Worcester is under 30 years old, and she's got a bright future. Joe McKenna, who recently was elected to the legislature, another Republican who's under 30, and Jen Casey, who represents this area on the Governor's Council. I don't know if you've had her on your show, but she does a fantastic job as well. And I think you'll see all of them in the future, run for higher office. They're getting started early and doing a great job, and they work hard, and it shows.
It does. Chanel, thank you so much. Our 30 minutes is over. Can you believe
wow.
it's so
goes
quick?
by so quickly.
I know.
Yes.
Very quick, any ideas on who you would like to see lead the party?
Well, I think we have a great field. As I said, it's a diverse bunch, but I think any of them would do a great job as our nominee. They all have their strengths. I think it's eventually going to come down to a handful of candidates. I like Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, Scott Walker, Ted Cruz. I think you'll see the field will start to narrow and people will start to kind of coalesce, but right now it's wide open and it's going to be an exciting primary
It really
season.
is.
Yes.
Chanel, thank you again so much for being
you.
on our show tonight, and welcome to Fitchburg.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We thank you for watching Your Right to Know and sitting in with the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. As we leave you, we want you to remember that your local city or town Republican Committee is your only grassroots organization that supports and holds dear your liberty and your constitutional rights and conservative values. We encourage you to join us. Why? Because to us, the GOP stands for growth, opportunity, and prosperity, and because we always stand for freedom. Thank you and good night.
America, we stand for freedom. So let us all unite to yearn and strive for our republic that reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and